Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori if you're new, and I am so excited that you're here. Today, we're gonna be going through the 10 worst books that I've ever read according to Goodreads. I'm a little bit nervous. I feel like I'm gonna get offended.
I am offended that it's on this list and that the average rating of this book is so low.
But I hope that you're excited. Grab your coffee, snack, drink some water if you haven't drank any water yet today, and let's talk about some books. Okay, so we're gonna go, I'm gonna be looking at my Goodreads. We're gonna go from my highest rated to my absolute lowest rated, or like ending at the absolute lowest rated book according to my Goodreads that I've read. So we will start with The Violent Season by Sarah Walters. The average rating for this book is a 3.52.
So
I gave this book a 2-star. This book I listened to on audio, and there were elements that I did like to this book. Hi, from editing Tori. Apparently I was just very excited to jump into my thoughts about some of these books, and I forgot to give you some synopsi. So here I am. We're gonna do the synopsis for The Violent Season. So this book is about kind of like this cursed town. There's this myth or like belief that everyone in this town is cursed, and every November the people in Wolf's Ridge are overwhelmed by a hunger for violence, and they turn into these very violent people. Our main character is Wyatt Green, whose mother was brutally murdered, convincing Wyatt that this yearning isn't a morbid legend but rather a palpable force infecting her neighbors. And she's trying to get down to the bottom of this curse, but no one in the town wants to work with her, believe her, anything like that. And she's trying to find evidence and convince everyone this is real. And as the reader, you're trying to figure out, like, is she just crazy? Like, everyone's saying that she's crazy? Or like, is the town actually cursed type thing? The parallels to The Great Gatsby were interesting, if kind of like, they didn't have a lot of context. Like, I saw what the author was trying to do, but it just wasn't done great. But overall, this plot was very predictable. The writing was so repetitive. It was like the author just thought you couldn't remember anything. So like throughout every single chapter, she's like rehashing the emotions of the main character, the history of the main character, and you're like, sis, we get it. Like, I've read this part already. I don't need you to like go through it again. You know what I mean? Do I think that The Violent Season deserves to be on this list? Yes. Yes, I do. The next book that has the same average rating, so an average rating of 3.52, is Fly By Night by Tara O'Connor. This is a young adult graphic novel leaning more to the like younger side of young adult, I would say. I gave this book a 3.5, so I think that that rating is warranted. I picked this book up on a whim because I saw it on my Libby app and it was available. I was in the mood for a graphic novel, so I was like, yeah, this is like a spooky thriller young adult graphic novel. Like, let's have a good time with it. And so I really didn't have any expectations going into it. For what it was, I thought it was pretty fun. We follow Dee, who was trying to figure out what happened to her twin sister. She went missing, and it's kind of that in-between space of like becoming a cold case, and the police are no longer going to investigate her missing sister. And so Dee takes it upon herself to figure out this mystery. Her sister disappeared in the woods one day, so she goes in to explore the woods, and she comes across something that's very surprising and goes down that road. I really liked the themes of this book because I thought that it actually handled grief pretty well for a young adult novel. For a young adult graphic novel that was really just supposed to be like quite short and more of a thriller. It touches on grief very well, and it also has underlying themes of environmentalism, which I thought was actually pretty well represented. So I think this rating is fair. Do I think it deserves to be on this list? Like, yes, because I think that that 3.52 is like an accurate rating. Then we have Survive the Night by Riley Sager, which has an average rating of 3.51. I think that that is generous for this book. I gave this book 2 stars. I like Riley Sager. My favorite book by him is Lock Every Door. I felt like Survive the Night really just, I don't think that he put a lot of planning into the ending of this book. Survive the Night takes place in the 80s, I believe. Our main character, Charlie Jordan, is a college student, and she is being driven across the country by a serial killer. Maybe. Behind the wheel is Josh Baxter, a complete stranger that she met when she was trying to post for a ride on this bulletin ride board, and the stranger walks up to her and is like, oh yeah, I'm headed that way, I'll give you a ride. They start to get to know more about each other while they're in the car driving across the country, and Charlie's noticing that his story doesn't really add up, and she starts to question, is she going to survive this night and this ride with a stranger? The ending of this book was what really, really ruined it for me. I thought that the beginning, I thought that the majority, like 75%, was really good. The audiobook was also fabulous as well, but the last 25%, man, it was like Riley Sager was like, oh, I forgot I was writing this. Let me just make some crazy stuff happen. And as a reader, you're kind of left like, what was that? Like, what was that ending? Like, everything else was really good, but the ending, you were just like, what in the heck and bob is going on? In my review, I said, yeah, the suspense was good. The characters weren't very likable, but I think that was the point. Do I think it deserves to be on this list? Definitely. It's not, if I'm gonna recommend you a Riley Sager book, it's not going to be Survive the Night. I don't think that's one of his strongest works. This next one I'm a little bit surprised, but also not surprised at all. This is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I gave this 3 stars, and the average rating on Goodreads is 3.49. I thought that the plot and the writing style of this book were compelling. The plot was really the most interesting, and then by the end, I was just really curious of how the author was going to end the story. I wasn't super in love with any of the characters. We follow this group of girls who's on this like secluded island off of Maine. They've all been deformed by this like toxin in the air. So they kind of stay secluded, and they can't really go out into the wilderness because this toxin has also manipulated, for lack of a better word, or like impacted the wilderness as well, and like the animals and everything that's on the island. So they don't think that they'll survive because everything is just like next level scary due to this toxin. It just wasn't my favorite horror because it was relying on body horror and like this grotesque element to explaining this tox, what it did to them, experimenting on how or if they could get rid of this toxin in their bodies and return back to like normal type thing. This book wasn't scary. Like, nothing scary happens in this book. The author was just really relying on, oh, if I just like describe this gross thing that's happening with someone's body, like that's gonna be scary. And it just like wasn't. I gave it 3 stars. To be honest, that might be kind of generous. It's probably more of like a 2.5. Do I think it deserves to be on this list? Yeah. Okay, this next reading, this blows my mind that this book has an average rating of 3.49. This is a Kindle Unlimited romance fae series called The Two Princes of Summer by Nissa Letter. I didn't write a review for this book. I wish I did because this book is so forgettable. I gave this book 2 stars. In reality, I think this book deserves a 1 star. The writing is awful, and I feel like, when did this come out? In 2017. This author just said, I read ACOTAR and I want to like jump on this bandwagon type thing. It really wasn't believable because this main character has really fallen on hard times. I think that her mother passes away and she's dealing with a lot of grief, and she really just wants to escape And so when this Fae prince, who comes out of nowhere, sees her in this graveyard, like grieving her mom, he takes her to Fairy, and she is just like fully, yeah, I just want to leave my entire life behind, like just keep me here with you. And it really like wasn't believable, because the relationship between her and the Fae wasn't strong. The attitude of this girl to just be like, my mom died, I still have a sister in the human world that I care about a lot, but I am just so willing to abandon like my entire life to be with this fairy prince that like I don't even really love type thing. It was just very odd. Also, there was no smut. Like, I don't understand. I was so lost when I finished this book, and I was like, what was the purpose of this? Like, there was no message, there was no theme, there was no like, you know, deeper anything. Do I think that the average rating of 3.49 is a fair rating for this book? Definitely not. I'm surprised that it's not lower. And do I think that this book deserves to be on this list? 100%. The next book is The Last Witness by Claire McFall. Guys, I swear, I just didn't want to give any synopsises for any of these books. So, The Last Witness, our main character Heather is in kind of a predicament. 1 year ago, she survived, and she was kind of a final girl, if you will. She was the last one standing, and it has consequences. Heather agreed to go camping with Dougie and his friends because she's desperate to get closer to him. On a secluded beach, it sounds like the perfect place, but the trip takes a sinister turn that brings Heather's plans to a violent end. One by one, they keep getting picked off, and a year later, Heather knows that she's lucky to be alive, but people are asking for answers. They want to know what happened, and she's claiming that she doesn't remember anything, but they're pushing her to get her memory back because they want to hold someone accountable for these disappearances, and they think that she is to blame. So she has to clear her name. The average rating for this book is 3.48. I gave this book 2 stars. I'm really glad that I wrote a review for this book because otherwise it is not memorable, like, at all. The plot flips back and forth between the past and the present time to tell the story. It wasn't my favorite because you really don't connect with anyone in this book. It did have that element of suspense. Like, I do really like when you're flipping between the past and the present to build suspense in a thriller, so I thought that that was done very well. I think that the writing of this book was good. It's just like the overall plot for me wasn't great. That's what really made it such a low rating. And then the big climactic point of this book happens right at the end. So it's like there's all this build up for maybe 85% of the book, or probably more, like 90% of the book. The last 10%, you get this one big, you know, bomb dropped on you. And it really just didn't have the impact that I think the author wanted it to have. And so that's why this book fell so flat for me, because you get all this build up, all of this suspense of like what is going on, and then you finally figure out like what's happening, and it was just kind of like meh. Do I think that this book deserves to be on this list? Yes. Okay, then we have a non-fiction book, which I'm surprised that I'm not to see it on this list. It's called On Becoming Fearless by Ariana Huffington. I went through this book in one of my monthly wrap-ups, in my March monthly wrap-up. I gave this book 1 star, and I also DNF'd it. I don't think that this book aged well. So this is Ariana Huffington, who is she works for the Huffington Post. She like created and founded their online presence, like their online magazine type presence and like social media. She wrote this in 2007, and it just felt very out of touch for me, and then it started getting to the point where I was really just like disagreeing with what she was saying. It felt very out of touch with the actual fears that women have, because she was talking so much about it's on becoming fearless. So women have a lot of adversity that we face in a lot of different aspects of our life, whether it's, you know, personal trauma that we're working through, family, being a mother, in your professional career, in your creative capacity as well. And some of them I was like, yeah, like I can see this. But when she really started getting into the professional sphere of like the adversities that women face, that's where it felt really, really out of touch, and I didn't like and I didn't agree with what she was saying. So keep in mind, my 1-star rating is extremely subjective. Like, that is my own opinion. There might be other people who relate to this book a lot more or agree with what she's saying and would therefore give it a higher rating. For me, the experience was, you completely lost me at this point, and I really disagree with what you're like preaching in this book. So I'm just gonna DNF it and put it down at 50%. So yes, I do think it deserves to be on this list. Y'all, this next one blows my stinking mind, and I am offended that it's on this list and that the average rating of this book is so low on Goodreads. What is happening? That is Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi with an average rating of 3.42 stars. The fact that Permanent Record isn't like higher on this list with a higher rating blows my mind. But what I'm thinking is happening here, I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this book, but I understand that Mary H.K. Choi's writing style is not for everyone. I think that she is an extremely talented writer. Her writing style is so realistic. Like, her characters, you would think that she just wrote a memoir of someone off the street. Honestly, I feel like if this were like considered a memoir, like a nonfiction, it would have a higher rating. If you like stream of consciousness, if you like seeing a snapshot of real life type writing, I don't know why, I feel like I'm blanking on like the better description of what it's called. I think you would love this book. But if you don't like that, and if you like to read because you like to escape real world problems, I don't think that you would like this book, because our main character, Pob, is struggling with a lot of financial issues, with anxiety. He's very self-sabotaging. He has a very toxic, cyclical, self-sabotaging mindset. And so reading about that, I think, can be really triggering for some people, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people don't like this book, because if those are things that you're experiencing in your own life, like financial issues, student loans, going to college, really difficult family dynamics, you're gonna be like surfacing and discussing, and in a really difficult way, all of the things that like I'm dealing with in my life, and I don't like it type thing. And in that way, I think that this book could be very stressful for some people to read, because it is so real and raw. So I'm surprised that this book is on this list, because I think what Mary H.K. Choi does, she does so well. But maybe people just have that much more of like an extreme reaction to it, because they're like, ew, like I don't want to hear about this in a book. Do I think that Permanent Record deserves to be on my worst books that I've read from Goodreads? No, I absolutely don't. I'm like so surprised. I can understand it, but I don't like it. So the second to worst book that I've read, according to Goodreads, is Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton, with an average rating of 3.39 stars. I think that that rating is kind of fair. I gave this book a 3.5 because it was fun, and I also listened to this on the audiobook. I talked about this book in my May wrap-up, so I won't go super into it, but this book is a young adult horror that follows this group of paranormal investigators who are teenagers, and one of them is a medium. The others are kind of there for support that have different strengths. Like, one person is their social media manager, the other one is like their filmographer, and it's just really fun. It has kind of everything that you need. It has suspense. It's really funny. Like, there's comedic relief. There's a lot of ghosts. There's that supernatural element to it. The antagonists in this book are good, but like funny. If you're reading this book and you want it to be more of a silly, goofy time, I recommend you listen to the audiobook because one of the characters is Australian, and the voice actor that does the Australian accent is so bad, and I think that that's why I like this book as much as I did. Like, a 3.5 star is probably a little bit generous for like what it is, for the writing style, for the plot. Like, it's not a literary moment by any means, but I was just like dying laughing at how horrible this Australian accent was. When the character is supposed to be like the main antagonist in the story, and it's supposed to be like, ooh, like we're finding out all of these like scary, creepy like reveals, and it was just like, I was just hysterically crying laughing. I can understand why this book is on this list. If you're looking for something that's really gonna scare the pants off you, this isn't it. If you're looking for a really fast, this audiobook I want to say was like 4 to 6 hours long. Something really fast, entertaining, and like creepy, scary-ish, but more just like funny. I recommend it. Do I think that this book should be on this list? Kind of. Okay, and my absolute worst book that I've read according to Goodreads is called This Is Not a Ghost Story by Andrea Portes, or Ports. I don't know how you say her last name. Me again. This is the last one. So we follow our main character, Daffodil Franklin. Also, her name is Daffodil. In the book, she goes by Daffy. I forgot to mention that, but this entire book, all I was thinking about was like Daffy Duck. Beside the point, the synopsis is, I am not welcome and somehow I know that. Something doesn't want me here. She is in the summer between her freshman year of college and high school, and she finds herself this kind of cushy job that is house sitting a mansion for a wealthy couple. As summer progresses, the shadows lengthen, and Daffodil comes to realize that the house is more than it appears. She starts to get the super duper creeps and figure out if she needs to abandon her job at this haunted house, or is the spirit trying to tell her something, and what is the key to settling this grudge that the house has against her. I gave this book 2 stars. Thank God I wrote a review for this book, because otherwise I would have nothing to say because I don't remember it. But apparently the narrator of this audiobook made the book that much better. She did different voices for each of the characters, so I always appreciate when that effort is put in. It's a young adult thriller. It was pretty subpar. If I was reading the physical book, I probably would have DNF'd, but the narrator of the audiobook was so good that I continued with it. This is my scathing review because I think that this book honestly deserves it. If it weren't for the voice actor of this book, I don't know how anyone would read this book. The writing, not great. The plot, awful. The author literally ruined the entire plot with the ending that she decided to go with. As much as I want to spoil this book, like, I won't. Like, if you want to read it, go ahead, but I don't recommend it. It's not a good time. The ending of this book is so garbage that it ruins the rest of the book for you. Like, it would have been okay, and then the ending, you get to the ending and you're like, why did I waste my time with this book? It was so bad. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to hear them. Also, all my other social medias are linked down below if you want to see more from me. I post every Sunday and Thursday, and we do monthly reading sprints. If you want to subscribe, I would really appreciate it. I love talking about books with my book besties. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, friends!